He will be presenting on Zgo, a presentation on the experience of applying and delivering on the work of a ZCG grant, some lessons learned and tips for grant recipients and people considering applying. With that, thank you. Go ahead, Rene.
Thank you, John. I also want to thank the Zcash Foundation for the opportunity to come here and speak to you and share the journey from first discovering Zcash all the way to here presenting at Zcon. And I'm hoping that I would also encourage other people in the community to join and consider bringing their ideas and their contributions. So, who am I? I was born in Ecuador, and I was raised there, and now I live in the United States. I'm an engineer, and I have experience in a bunch of different industries, working in technology, consulting, project management, and I've always had a personal interest in free and open source software, as well as tools that help us keep our privacy. You may know someone that is always trying to get people to use GPG encryption on their email and always attaches his public key to the email. That's me. I hadn't really had crypto on my radar until one day while reading about new improvements in cryptography and other tools that you could use more as a consumer for digital privacy, I stumbled upon the Zcash website. So I discovered that someone had built a publicly available, privacy-preserving payment network, and it was already there. And my mind was blown. I just kept asking myself, why isn't everyone using this? I tried to read as much as I could about Zcash, and I also joined the community at the forum and the different social channels. And through there, I also started understanding a little bit more about the challenges of answering this question. So throughout those discussions, one of the things that I kept seeing was that there was a gap in the ecosystem. From the beginning, I was always interested in using Zcash. I wanted to buy things with Zec. I wanted to transact with it on a day-to-day basis. And if you go back far enough on Zec pages, you probably will find a post that says, someone should make an app for a cash register for Zec. And that idea came up to me, and I just kept thinking about it for a while. I spoke to some people in the community about it. Eventually, as I got to know a little more about the technology of Zcash and how it works, I got an idea around October of 2021 of what became the mechanism underlying Zgo that allows for non-custodial payments to be handled by our app. I usually carry a pocket notebook with me, and as this is a screenshot of my notebook when I finally thought of how could this actually work. And a couple of weeks later, my wonderful wife Lily came up with the name Zgo, and I went ahead and bought the domain. And that started the process of actually creating it. So I started creating a small prototype to prove that my idea could work and it's something that I could implement. And after that work, I decided to keep going. I shared this idea with my father, who also has always been interested in open source software, programming, computer science. And we started discussing about those challenges that we thought are preventing vendors of accepting Zcash for payment in their businesses. So we decided to try to identify these challenges and also find ways that the features of our app could address those challenges. One of the big ones is that the Zec price changes. So we decided to put a live price feed in the app for major fiat currencies, and also to allow the vendors to price their items in their local fiat and have our app handle the conversion. Another challenge that we identified is that sharing your address is cumbersome. It's not something that you want to type by hand, let alone try to dictate to someone so they can type it in for you. And Zec has 8 decimal places on it, and entering an amount manually and missing a 0 here or there could actually end up really hurting a business or really hurting a customer. So following the example of the Zec pages, we looked into ZIP321 and decided to implement that standard for the payment URIs and encode them into QR codes to take that burden away both from the business and from the user, and we can ensure that we have accurate addresses and accurate amounts. Another challenge that we identified for a vendor is that they would have to monitor their wallet to see when they got paid, who paid them, and we thought that that's something that we could have our system take care of by using the viewing keys, which is, I think, one of the biggest strengths that Zcash has. And one last challenge that we identified is that most localities will require some sort of accounting for your crypto business. And given how we designed the app, we were able to record that information for the business, especially the cost basis and the dates and the timestamps on which every little sec that they receive, and then make that available to the business as a data download that they could use with their accountant or their tax professional to then meet any requirements that they may have for tax purposes. So at this point, it's when we start considering that maybe we should submit a proposal to CCG. We have seen other apps submit a proposal successfully to build something for the community. We were very focused on this initial use case, which was retail, brick and mortar type point of sale, which was our original idea. But then we also received a very detailed, very thorough feature request from the community. This community member brought to us the use case of a professional selling their professional services. And in most cases, they use invoices to get paid. And those invoices are rarely handled on a face-to-face manner. They are usually emailed to someone. But besides that use case, this community member made a very compelling argument for integrating with existing applications, rather than creating yet another separate system that a small business would have to try to juggle with their existing systems. And I thought it was a very, very good idea to foster adoption of Zcash as a method of payment. So combining these two ideas is what became our proposal. And that's what we submitted last year. And we were very excited when it was approved late June 2022. Do you remember what else happened on late June 2022? The sandblasting began. So the entire ecosystem, in essence, had to pivot away from their roadmaps. Our original plan was to begin with unified addresses. The network upgrade 5 had just been completed, and we had Orchard live, and unified addresses were coming. But as both the protocol teams and the wallet teams had to move away from their original plans to address the network load, we then had to also adjust our plans, because if the wallets didn't support unified addresses, neither could we. So we decided to put on their unified addresses on hold and instead move with the rest of our plan using the sapling pool. And at this point, then it became about delivering that plan. So we started working on the payment confirmations on chain, which was one of the biggest stepping stones into the rest of the integrations that we were planning to develop. The next big integration that we decided to create was integrating with the Zero business application. So Zero is your traditional business accounting, customer relations management, invoicing application. But it allows us to create a plugin. So now a business that sends an invoice, when the client clicks that Pay Now button, they now have the option to pay with Zcash. At that point is where Zgo would take over, process the payment, and then report that back to the business. We then used a very similar architecture on a different use case, and that was our next integration, which is with WooCommerce. WooCommerce is one of the most popular e-commerce platforms for WordPress websites. And we created a plugin that allows existing shop to provide the option for the customer to pay with Zec. And in a similar fashion, we can then take that order from that point, we process the payment, and then report back to the shop. One of the key components of this is that these two integrations mean that the business itself, they don't have to change anything about their operations. From the perspective of the business, that order looks exactly the same as if it had been paid with a credit card, and they can just go on around their merry ways, and Zcash becomes just another set of payment rails. And they don't have to adapt their business processes, they don't have to adapt how they account for anything, and Zgo even allows other plugins in WordPress for e-commerce to interact, and we have already tested out that auto-fulfillment can work when Zgo reports back to WooCommerce that the order has been paid after it's confirmed on chain. So something that I didn't expect at the beginning when we started is that in order to build and test Zgo, we started developing these little scripts and tools and other things that were helping us to meet our goals. And we realized that this could probably be helpful for others in the community. So we kind of put that together, polished it a little bit, and released it. The first one is Zenith, which is a command line interface to Zcash D that allows you to send and receive transactions, supports Orchard, and it also supports zip 321 for the payment URIs, which I think it can be useful for someone that wants to run their full node and wants to have a little easier time using it on a day-to-day basis. And the other item that emerged out of our work in Zgo that we're very excited about is the Zcash Haskell library. So thanks to some recent developments in the Haskell ecosystem, we are now able to bring some of the great code and functionality that has been developed on Rust for Zcash, including what has been mentioned earlier in other talks, all the work that has been done auditing the Rust code that Zcash depends on. And we can bring that functionality to the Zcash ecosystem in Haskell. And this is something we're very excited about because it opens a lot of additional possibilities for our apps. So there are a few lessons that I want to share with everybody from my experience going through this process is that personally, it took me quite some time to go from, hey, I have an idea to maybe I should build this. And I think one of those obstacles was that, I just learned about crypto 2 years ago. I didn't feel like I was part of the community at that point. I'm not a cryptographer, and although we've been ramping up in like the inner workings of Zcash, we are more on the side of being users of the technology rather than developing the underlying cryptography. But now I realize that that is really not an obstacle to join this community. There's a lot of contributions that can happen without you having to been in crypto for long or having the depth of understanding of the cryptography. And that ties into the second lesson, is that the Zcash community is more than willing to help you. From the ZecPages team and the Nighthawk team answering my questions about how to encode a shielded memo through shielded memos, to the Zgo logo, which was actually designed by one of the members, our moderator, Jay, from the Telegram community, and freely shared very generously with us. I think one of the strengths of the Zcash community is that everybody is willing to help out in any way they can. And I think that that is something that if you have an idea that you want to bring forward, I think that you should look into asking people around it, and then you will be pleasantly surprised at how much help will be offered. Another lesson is that we should always make good plans, but also you need to remain flexible. The crypto environment is always changing for one reason or another, and it's better to be prepared to have to adapt and from the get-go, and be willing to pivot in different directions. Our original idea was focused on retail, and then we ended up moving away from that into integrating with existing business applications. And I think they're all valid use cases, but having that flexibility is, I think, one of the things that will allow us to grow the community more organically based on how the community responds to the things that we create. And another lesson that I want to is that try to share as much as you can with the community. The things that you are creating, even if just for yourself, may actually be useful for someone else, maybe the stepping stone that someone else needs to take that next step with their project. And I would definitely recommend that if you have ideas, if you're building things, it doesn't necessarily have to be code. I think the Zec Hub is a great example of this. So is the Zcash Latin America, where people are sharing what they like to do, what they enjoy producing, what their skills are, and others are picking it up and turning into something else and using it and growing it. And I think the growth that we are seeing both from Zec Hub and the Zcash Latin America, Zcash Brazil, shows that sharing this is one of the best ways to help grow the community. So what is next for us? We are now going to implement unified addresses for Zgo. There were some technical challenges that we had on dependencies on Zcashd, but thanks to the work that we have done with that Zcash Haskell library, we can now resolve those technical challenges on our end and remove that dependency on Zcashd. And we're really excited about implementing unified addresses here. Another thing that we want to work on is just keep developing the Zenith wallet and also developed Zenith Lite for desktop. I think that the desktop wallet space right now could use a new wallet that is available and it's easy to use, and we're definitely excited about starting the work on this. And interrelated with all of this is to continue adding the functionality to the Zcash Haskell library. Now, being able to leverage the code that exists in Rust from Haskell for our development is opening up a bunch of new possibilities of what we can accomplish with our applications without having to rely too heavily on the full node implementation. So we're looking forward to developing more of this. So are there any questions?
There are a few questions here. Let me bring them up just one sec. Okay. Do you consider moving to Africa as part of Zgo priority?
We don't currently have a specific target. We are working with communities and reaching to members of the community to figure out who wants to use the application, and we're happy to work with anyone from the community. I think that in certain areas where the use of Zcash is more of a pressing need, are definitely, it's somewhere where we can definitely help. I think having a tool like Zgo can remove some of the friction for people to accept Zcash, make it a little easier for people to accept Zcash for regular payments, and we would be happy to work with the Zcash ambassador in Africa and anyone else. Yeah.
Do you plan more dissemination through advertising so that businesses and entrepreneurs start using Zgo?
That is a good question. I think that there's a difference between advertising and marketing, and I think advertising can be something that seems straightforward. You know, you hire an advertising agency and then you pay for it and then it's out there. But I think marketing is a little more effective. And what I mean by marketing is I think we need to find communities that want to spend ZEC. I think the key is to finding both the buyers and the sellers and bring them together with the tools that make the transaction easy. And I think just advertising that Zgo is out there and you can use it is probably not enough. We have done quite a bit of outreach to vendors asking, well, here we have a tool, it makes it easy for you to accept ZEC, and usually the question is, well, who's going to come and pay me with ZEC? And it's difficult to point to a large group and say, like, these 300 people are going to come at least once a week. And if you can provide that to a vendor, it's usually not worth the effort of implementing something different. And I think the best approach is trying to find those communities where people that are willing to buy things with ZEC and people that are willing to accept ZEC as the payment and bring them together from both sides to try to create that circular economy that some of the ambassadors have been discussing. I think that is going to have a more lasting effect than an advertisement campaign could probably have.
Do you know if the integration can be improved using Zebra?
Right now, the integration does depend on some of the wallet functionality in Zcash. With the new developments that we have for the Zcash Haskell library, some of that could be offloaded from Zcash and then handled by our server itself, at which point probably Zebra and Zcash would be pretty much interchangeable. But the current version definitely depends on some of those wallet RPC endpoints from Zcash.
Can merchants use Zgo to accept Zcash but have it automatically converted into a stablecoin or fiat?
Well, Zgo is completely non-custodial. So the ZEC goes straight from the customer to the business's wallet. We never take any custody of that ZEC, so we really wouldn't be able to do anything with it. I think if that is the goal, I think it would be something that would need to be implemented more at the wallet level. I think that is also a question that has come up as part of onboarding, because the best example that I have for it is, like in the old days, when people used a lot of cash, part of your business operations was to empty the till and then go deposit that in the bank. I think that with Zec being digital cash, the process should be very similar, and the business can decide based on their operations and what's the most effective way, periodically take the Zec that they have collected and then either exchange it into fiat or some other token that they feel more comfortable holding for the long term. But I think it's also something that would be very personal for each business on how much they want to hold in Zec for how long. But right now, given that we're a non-custodial service, it's really up to the business on how they want to manage their Zec.
That's all the questions we have on the Whova. If there's anyone in the audience that has any questions, we can field those. If not, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Yeah. Oh, Roosevelt. Okay, we'll get a mic.
Hola, en español.
Claro, no hay problema.
Además de WordPress, ¿se tiene previsto, pensado dentro del roadmap hacer algo para Joomla u otro CMS?
Hemos investigado otras opciones y muchas de estas opciones tienen restricciones. Lamentablemente, estas empresas buscan siempre tratar de contener a los clientes y no permitirles salir de su ecosistema. En esos casos es un poco más difícil crear estas integraciones y estos plugins porque ellos intencionalmente quieren mantener todo el sistema bajo su control. Hemos hecho investigaciones sobre otros sistemas, por ejemplo, QuickBooks es uno de los sistemas de manejo de negocios, pero de nuevo es la empresa que controla QuickBooks no quiere abrir el ecosistema a otras empresas. Otros proveedores de pagos funcionan de una forma muy similar, de que tratan de capturar a los negocios y forzarles a utilizar su sistema de recibos, su sistema de pagos y mantenerlos contenidos dentro de su propio ecosistema. Entonces, requiere un poco de análisis y si alguien encuentra una aplicación que ellos consideran que podría ser un candidato para una integración, hemos diseñado el sistema en una forma que le hace flexible y podríamos crear diferentes integraciones.
Gracias.
Claro.
Hi, my background primarily is retail, and the thing that really bothers me is that we don't use Zcash as a money. And I have thinking and talking everything about it during this Zcon, and I was thinking, is it possible to use as a POS, or it will be too much, it will be too expensive, like to us to have a machine, then it will be easier, like a...
Well, our original idea was to create a point of sale, and that's what we implemented. I actually could have it. I have it even here on the. And we built it in a way that it can run on any device. You can do it on a cell phone, on a tablet. It's most point of sales nowadays, they want to tie you into their particular hardware, and right now you can run it anywhere and you can create your orders and then you can request for payment right now. You could offer it, pay it, and it's done. So That was our original idea. I think that the challenge in that case has been more about finding those businesses that are willing to accept ZEC, especially because I think that one of the challenges that we need to figure out is for the foreseeable future, most businesses are going to have to live in both worlds. It's really too hard to ask for a business to just accept ZEC. They're going to have to accept the people that come in wanting to pay with ZEC and the people that want to come in paying with cash or credit cards. And in many cases, having to juggle the two systems could be challenging because, like I said before, the existing credit card payments tend to just want to keep people trapped in their ecosystem. They don't offer very much options to add a plugin and connect. So, but we have the functionality for point of sale. We try to build it as flexible as possible so it runs on any device that basically can run a web browser. And yeah.
Hi. What's the benefit of using Zenith over Zcash D, and does it have support for the memo field?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you very well, but what's the benefit of using Zcash D?
Zenith over Zcash D.
Oh, the Zenith wallet, well, basically the comparison is the Zcash CLI program, the Zcash CLI. If you've ever played with it, it's a very low-level interface. For example, if you wanted to send a transaction, you have to write raw JSON and hand it over type thing. And that can be difficult. Another good example where we had to build the tool is if you want to send a memo, a shielded memo through Zcash CLI, you have to do the encoding of the memo yourself separately and then put it together. We kind of like just abstracted all of that into the interface, so you can just type your memo and send it, and it will be correctly encoded into the message and into the chain. That was kind of the root of Zenith. Was we needed to manipulate transactions, we needed to manipulate the node to develop our application and to test it. And as we did, you know, the features started piling up, and it started becoming a fairly complete, though simple wallet. So that was the motivation. And another thing that came up originally is that we were trying to experiment with unified addresses, and creating a unified address on a node. Again, you have to work with the RPC and then work with the JSON file and the output. And we just abstracted that out so we can create new unified addresses in a more user-friendly manner.
Just one sec.
So, yeah, I know you said that currently it's not a custodial solution, so obviously no ability to convert automatically. But would you ever have would you consider at some point offering a second option where there was a custodial solution for businesses which did want this automatic sort of just convenient conversion?
We've thought about it, but it is a tricky question, especially because we are US-based. I think, unfortunately, the regulatory environment for US-based entities in that respect, it's a little uncertain. And at the time, organizations that, one of the reasons other crypto payment providers have kind of cut off the United States is because of that uncertainty, because we don't have clarity on the rules of when are you required to meet a certain legal standard and get certain licenses and when you don't. And given that it's a big gray area, it's a pretty big risk from that standpoint. And another thing that concerns me about being a custodial service is that at that point you also become a bigger target for something like a hack, where if they know that there's a lot of Zec sitting in a particular service, it's going to be a pretty attractive target for someone trying to get to that Zec.
So I suppose though, as it just works from directly wallet to wallet, if someone else were to develop in a different jurisdiction, were to develop something that could stand alongside your service, then that could be something that would
certainly, because in the end, the Zec is at that wallet address, and what gets done with that Zec is certainly just up to the owner of that Zec. I think that's one of the advantages of the non-custodial is that, once they have it, they can decide how do they want to transact with it, keep it, swap it, and it will be up to the people that own those coins.
Sounds good.
Any particular reason why Haskell was selected?
That's a good question. Part of it is just personal interest. I like functional programming, and another reason is that Haskell is actually really good at writing parsers. And a lot of what we're doing here is basically parsing stuff, parsing transactions, parsing memos, trying to find things inside the transactions, which makes it very, very well suited for the task. And Haskell also tends to be very good at concurrency, and we believe also that if we were to scale very quickly, our code would be able to support that additional load without too much trouble, without having to move to something completely different just because they just can't handle the load. There's been very, very large systems built on top of Haskell or derivatives of Haskell because of that system.
Thank you so much, Rene.
Thank you.